I was disappointed but over time, in the way uh, academics responded not to literary activism, but to the changes that were taking place in publishing, and the fact that they were uh, insufficiently aware of the changes that were being brought about by the market, and insufficiently resistant to it, and in fact sometimes themselves either willingly or unwillingly colluding with it or having to collude with it. And of course, I mean, even as kind of institutions and universities in Britain have been transformed. Transformed is a nice sounding word. Changed by the expectations of the market. There hasn't been enough resistance, among academics. There has been a lot of there have been a lot of complaints in private. I mean, those are private conversations again, but not enough resistance. But going back to the 90s, when this whole business of, at that time, the novel was something that was being identified with new, so-called new literatures, new identities, etc., etc. The new was often a misnomer because those literatures were arriving from countries which had, a long modern traditions. Let's not go back to ancient traditions. Long modernist and modern traditions, which were little known about. So at that time, when books were being positioned in a particular way, um, um, and when the market decided, well, uh, the book. This is the book which is the kind of you know the word is out that this is the book about this part of the world right now, in the autumn of 1996, let's say. Um, a- and and that book would also then go onto the syllabus in in the in the universities. So in the universities, they wouldn't query this structure of doing things. They wouldn't think to themselves that, um, but which part of the world is it, and what exactly is happening there in terms of its literary traditions, and um, where does this book relate to that? The book would come ready-made, along with its tradition, the so-called tradition belonged to, ready-made into the market, and without any kind of questioning, it would then be picked up by academic departments, and I wouldn't say uh, discussed or taught or read, as much as a kind of uh, performance of some of the PR work was almost being done in the academic departments, without it being called PR work, but it being called academic work. I mean, this might sound unfair, but there is some truth to it. So that was a disappointment, and that had to be questioned by anything one calls literary activism. And the collusion and the acceptance of stuff by academics that had got into the Booker shortlist, or had been kind of had there was a buzz about them, and then why should there be that one-to-one connection between what's happening in the brain in an academic department and what's happening out there in the marketplace and the instruments of the marketplace? So why should there not be a questioning? Why should there be a seamless connection? That was one of the things that was being that I was thinking about. As far as pushback is concerned, I haven't had that much, Elika. I mean, the people who sort of take part um, uh, are are happy to be able to find a place in which to say these things. All serious writers, or most of them. I mean, we have the idea of the idiot savant or whatever, but actually, writers, especially poets, have thought very long and hard about writing and about language traditionally. You know, and I suspect everybody who's at the cusp of some kind of epoch, and they are kind of doing things with genre which aren't ready made, will have to think critically about what they're doing, and people are willing to talk about it. But you take them to a literary festival and they're supposed to talk about what they have for breakfast, literally. I mean, the day they produce a work of art, I mean, do they have eggs or not? And if they don't, I mean, what effect does that have on their creativity? That's what it's become. But if we go back to another time, we know that artists and writers actually talk a lot about not just their own craft and their own writing, but why they're doing this peculiar thing in the first place. It is something peculiar they're doing. Their parents would have told them that. And the moment you rebut that, you don't rebut that with success, Elika. You don't say that you said I was doing something peculiar, but look, I'm a millionaire now, because most of them don't become millionaires. What you rebut them with is thinking. That's the moment when you begin to think, why do I do this? Why am I doing this? And that leads to those kind of activist kind of moments where you're thinking about your love of something that is unlikely, that leads to nothing, according to your parents and according to various others. That leads to criticism, leads to thought, leads to critical thought. Uh, it's misleading to think that writers and artists are not thinking critically to figure out what they're doing, but are wanting to rebut their critics through success, through material success.